Dr. Kevin Ende again describing Dr. Epstein's article on hairline lowering that recently came out. One of the biggest differences between my procedure and Dr. Epstein's procedure is clearly laid out within the article. Dr. Epstein describes an incision that is just beyond the terminal hairs. In other words, he is removing some of the finer hairs that are in front of the thicker hairs. However, by putting a line right in front of these thicker hairs, um, that is potentially a visible scar. And that would make sense why Dr. Epstein describes a visible scar with his procedures in the complications section. I find that by having done this procedure many, many times, probably more so than anybody on the East Coast, that by performing a extreme trichophytic incision behind the third row of the terminal hairs, one can still have those terminal hairs regrow through the scar to avoid it. I know I've discussed this in previous written materials as well as videos. However, I have never gotten into that great of a detail with it because it hasn't really come up. But seeing Dr. Epstein's article and reading that he has a visible scar with some of his procedures, that would make sense if he's making the incision in front of or just along to use his words, just along the leading edge of the terminal hairs. One would get a much less visible scar if they perform a trichophytic incision, meaning you cut through the hair shafts but leave some of the bulbs of the terminal hairs underneath that scar, which will allow those hairs to regrow through the scar. And that may be because of the certain technique that I use that I'm still able to advance the hairline forward enough to achieve the results that we want, but I would never place the scar along the leading edge of the terminal hairs and rely on some of these very fine baby type hairs to actually hide a scar. We would want some of the thicker hairs to actually hide that scar. So again, that is one of the major differences between my procedure and Dr. Epstein's procedure.